Okay, welcome everyone. We're going to wait just a few more minutes as people are joining, and then we'll begin. Hope all of you have found somewhere with air conditioning today because it's definitely hot out there. Okay, excellent. I can see the lobby starting to fill up, so we'll begin. Hi everyone, and thanks for attending our webinar. Today we're going to be looking at kind of real-world threats and how to stay ahead of them. My name is Mark Kirby. I'm the Professional Services Director at Intersys, and I'm joined by Jake Ives, who is our Head of Security. So who is Intersys? We are a security-first MSP. We serve over 120 clients, and are really proud of our kind of a long-standing relationships that we have. We've got a kind of a 94% retention rate for clients that, and we only really have lost them to mergers and acquisitions of large organizations. Um, we've been working since the very beginning, almost 30 years ago, in 1996. When we were started, we were working in digital forensics and then moved into kind of highly regulated industries. So we've been doing cybersecurity since well before it was in vogue. And as a result, our clients are more than 10 times less likely to suffer a cyber attack. Um, we often find that cybersecurity kind of gets pushed to the bottom of the priority list until something happens. So a lot of the time, people come to us because they've had a cyber breach, and essentially it's just because they've kind of ignored IT and cybersecurity for a long time. But it's no longer the case that you really can do that. Everybody knows this, but the cost of cybercrime is going up, and it's projected to continue going up. I mean, the very fact that nobody carries money anymore means that the most lucrative way to get money is through cybercrime, and that's what criminals are turning to. And we'll talk about later. You don't even need to be a computer genius to be able to be able to affect the cybercrime and actually get money from it. Um, so we're looking here at the NCSC's Cybersecurity Breaches Survey from 2025. And on the left-hand side, we can see the sectors that have been targeted. And these are sectors that have actually reported a breach. So very different from sectors that actually have had a breach. These are ones that knew about it and reported it. As the chairman of Cisco, which is a IT security brand, famously said, there are two kinds of organizations: those that have been breached and those that don't know that they've been breached. And so I think this kind of represents a fundamental change in the way that we approach cybersecurity. It's not, um, you know, protect yourselves and then you won't get breached. It is a protect yourselves, understand that you will get breached, and make sure you've got mechanisms in place for recognizing that breach and to respond to it as well. And that's what we're going to talk about later in this presentation. But back to these graphs, if you look at the ones on the left, you can see that information and communications, 43% experience a breach. And I'd say the chances of the reason that that is so high is because that's their business. If they do get breached, it's going to be much more noticeable than someone, say, in the food or hospitality area when they may not even know it's happened. If you look at the graph on the right-hand side, these are the types of attacks that happen, and it's no surprise that phishing attacks are right at the top of the list. I would say that it's probably more like 100% of organizations had a phishing attack against them. It's just maybe 46% of them have really good mail security. Um, moving on to the next slide, which I think is more interesting. This is from our friends at Oric International. Uh, These are informations from insurance brokers about the types of claims that were made for loss events from cybersecurity. And what caused that. So we can see here malicious data breach, either through getting people's credentials or through hacking in some other way, caused a lot of financial reputational damage. But one thing I think is very interesting here as well is actually looking at the kind of the yellow bar, which is the accidental data breach. And so if you look at kind of healthcare and especially insurance, that's a lot of instances of that happening, and that can be as simple as accidentally putting the wrong email on the wrong person that on a, with sensitive information on an email. So, for example, I have three Matts that I regularly email. One is our MD, one is the head of IT at a client, and another one is a technician that works for a school. And you can imagine the information I'm sending any one of those people, I wouldn't want to go to any of the others. So yeah, it's one thing that you just have to remember to double check everything before you send it out. And I'm going to hand over to Jake, who's going to tell us a little bit more about the landscape today.
Brilliant, thank you, Mark. So yeah, hello everyone. Thanks for joining. And yeah, beyond firewalls, as the as the title suggests. So, in this post-COVID working world, where hybrid working is still very relevant, we're moving away from firewalls being the number one the defense mechanism, and we now need to focus on how we can offer the same level of protection that we can offer in the office environment. To those working from home, cafes, from airports, ensuring that no matter where someone is situated, where they're working from, that they're subject to the same level of security as those working in the office environment. So it's not nowadays it's not all about having the best firewall in your office. You need to think about the controls that are rolled out to your computers. So these are software firewalls, your EDR capabilities, your web protection, ensuring that if there are sites that you've blocked in the office environment, that the blocking of those sites extend to those working at home or at the airport. Yeah, there's a lot of focus on BYOD devices now. Back in the day, we all had work phones, corporate phones that were assigned to us by the business. Now we tend to access email and Teams and our other business data from our own personal devices. So it's protecting those as well. How do we protect those in the same way that we would protect a work computer and such like? So zero trust is a very relevant topic now. Relying solely on outer defenses such as firewalls, that will lead to delayed detection and response. So we need to think about the broader picture in this day and age. Next slide, please, Mark. Thank you. So I just want to run over some emerging threats that I've seen, kind of dominate all sectors of businesses over the last, 12, 24 months. We're seeing in recent days, and I've certainly seen this a lot recently, is supply chain based attacks where the weakest link of a supply chain is being compromised to get to the stronger part of the supply chain. So if you think that in your organization you have everything together, the security is brilliant, attackers may already be aware of that. Threat actors may already be aware that your security posture is very good, so they will target the weakest link in your supply chain, whether that be an events management company or your catering company, for example. They will target that weakest link and they will get to you via those means because the protection that you have in place is less likely to detect a threat originating from one of your supply chain supply chains. So we're seeing a lot of attacks intercepting session tokens by bypassing MFA entirely. So some of you may be familiar with the term browser in the middle or man in the middle style attacks, and attack strategies such as evil proxy. But if you're not aware of those, I would very, very strongly recommend getting in touch with us after this webinar to find out a bit more about that and how it can impact your organization. For many years we've been suggesting that MFA is the saving grace, right? That's the control that's going to stop an attack from happening, but that's not the case. There is so much more to it these days, and when we think about this attack strategy that can bypass MFA entirely, the emphasis is all on employee education and ensuring that both your IT techs and your employees are aware of what these sorts of attacks entail and how they can impact those in the organization. Another emerging threat topic is just misconfigurations exposing sensitive data. So, configuration of anything from a new virtual machine in Microsoft Azure or AWS to, a public Azure storage container, or an Azure storage container. These are on the surface; these are quite easy to set up, but there's always more to it. The security is paramount. Um, and it's very important to ensure that you are managing the keys to your to your Azure storage accounts in a secure fashion, and that you're locking down your storage containers to specific IPs or ensuring that they're only accessible over a VPN. I often see, and this still happens in this day and age, virtual machines provisioned in the likes of AWS and Azure that exhibit the default set of firewall rules that expose remote desktop protocol over the internet. So something like that, something as simple as not checking your network security groups in Azure could lead to detrimental outcomes. AI enhanced phishing campaigns. Obviously, AI is the talk of everyone's talking about AI these days. Don't want to go into it too much because it's a bit of a buzzword. But genuinely there is a threat there that we need to be aware of. I don't know if you've ever tried copying an unstructured email into the likes of ChatGPT or Copilot. What a great job it does at rewording that email. Threat actors from across the world, English speaking or not, will leverage the capabilities of AI to string a sentence that sounds very, very, very convincing, and they will send it to people in your organization. So it's being aware of how to recognize that. Employee use of unsanctioned SaaS tools. So what does this mean? This is, where certainly this happens more in bigger companies where you have so many different departments. You might have 10 different departments and a small IT team, for example. It might be that the IT team are very busy and the marketing team need to roll out something like HubSpot or something like that. Rather than go to IT, they might just go ahead with the creation of that environment. IT and the compliance team won't be aware that this is happening or that any of the setup is adhering to any standard security practice. It will just happen. I see this all the time in organizations. So, it's being able to detect that when that happens and call it out and say, right, okay, I could see that this has been created. Why wasn't the compliance team informed, and what's the next steps that you'll be taking to protect this environment? And finally, tools such as ransomware as a service platforms. You really don't have to be a sophisticated threat actor in this day and age to launch an attack on your victim. There are ransomware as a service platforms that even offer help desk style support. You can create a ticket with these ransomware as a service groups if you're having any trouble executing one of those attacks, and there will be people on hand to help you. This enables low-skilled actors to launch these sophisticated attacks with minimal technical knowledge, and this is only becoming more prominent. So it's something to be aware of. Next slide, please, Mark. So, are you asking these questions in your organization? Do you understand the cyber posture of your vendors and service providers? And is this reviewed on on an annual basis? Are your suppliers adhering to what is a foundational level of cybersecurity? Do they have multi-factor authentication implemented across their systems? What certifications do they have? Do they adhere to the ISO 27001 framework? Do they have a Cyber Essentials certification? This is stuff that you want to keep on top of. You need to know your vendors and your service providers. You need to know where there is, where there might be gaps. Um, do you have any real-time visibility of threats across endpoints? And does that extend to your cloud and your cloud identities? So what about when users are working from home or remotely? It's not about surveilling users and understanding what they're working on and if they're doing the right thing. It's actually understanding what's happening on their machine and if there's any security concern. For example, has someone installed something to their device that's doing something untoward to their machine? Are you being informed of that? Are you getting an alert on that centrally, and are you able to respond to that? Do you know what platforms your employees use, and are they set up to a secure standard? So this is just a kind of repeat of what I mentioned earlier about knowing the different sorts of SaaS applications in use throughout your organization. Knowing that the marketing team have set up HubSpot, and knowing that the finance team have just recently migrated from Sage to Zero. It's just being aware of that. Can you honestly say that of every application that exists in your organization? Because I've worked with several organizations over the last year, helping them achieve the likes of Cyber Essentials. And the first question I usually ask is, so can you tell me a bit about, can you provide me with a list of all of the applications that you use throughout your organizations? And I might get about 4 back. And then I'll say, right, okay, can you now speak to this person, this person, this person, and ask them what applications they use? Suddenly the list gets bigger. And then we start asking questions like, who is an admin of those systems? Who has MFA set up? Who doesn't? Do those systems support logging capabilities? You get the idea. And another point is, are your employees equipped with the knowledge to spot modern attack strategies? So, back in the day, we saw, typical attack strategy happened over email. Someone would receive a malicious email that had a link to a page with a username and password box. The page looked quite similar to the actual system, but there was always some discrepancies that would allow you to identify that it wasn't quite the real thing. But there's so many new sorts of attack strategies that threat actors are exploiting in this day and age, such as QR code phishing. And I would encourage you to reach out to us afterwards if you're looking to find out more about those other attack strategies, because there's so many of them. But one to name is it's the QR code phishing, which is where a threat actor will send through an image of a QR code. Now, because there's no text in that email, it's hard for a email security platform to block that email. But what will happen is the employee will scan the QR code on their phone, and all of a sudden, they are now interacting with a malicious page on a device that's not managed by their company. You've lost that visibility. So there's loads of attack strategies to think about. And yeah, as I say, would encourage you reach out afterwards so we can discuss some of those. And I won't ramble on for too much longer on this slide, but are cloud environments configured securely and reviewed frequently? Do you have a clear visibility of the organization's current cyber risk exposure? No environment is perfect. It can never be perfect. It can never keep up with today's, fast-paced, threat landscape. Do you have an Excel sheet or some sort of system where you can track the risks across your organization? Are they ranked from low, medium, high severity. Something to think about. But anyway, I will stop talking for the moment and I'll hand back over to Mark for the next slide. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Jake. So we've talked about what the threats are, and we're now going to tell you about what we do to counter this. Intersys provides CSAS, Cybersecurity as a Service, because everyone loves a good acronym. And that is actually like a mix of products that we use and people. It's really important that you've got someone monitoring what's going on at any given time. And so that's why a core part of our cybersecurity as a service is a security operations center. So security operations center is a team of people that are overlooking any alerts that come in. And so we can configure alerts from so many different things, but generally you're going to want it to happen from either your kind of on-site infrastructure, your cloud infrastructure, whether it be 365 or Google, and any firewalls you've got, and all the tools that I'm going to talk about later on. Essentially, everything feeds back into the security operations center where the alerts are reviewed. False positives, which unfortunately are most of them, are weeded out, and then anything that truly looks suspicious gets acted on according to a playbook. So, for example, if we noticed that there was a login from an unusual country, we might call up our contact in the office and say, hey, this person just logged in from Spain. Are they on holiday? And generally, the answer is yes. However, we get alerts for things like impossible travel activity. You might have logged in London at 12 o'clock and then from Russia at 1 o'clock. That would ping up an alert. And in some situations, we might disable that account completely. Other things that we get alerts on is kind of attempted a denial of service attack on a firewall. So if someone's using an army of bots or something to kind of try to overwhelm a firewall, maybe a mass file deletion or mass file downloads, maybe suspicious email rules get set up. Those are the sort of things that we'd get alerted on, and our teams would react to. In the days, looping back to what Jake said, in the days pre-COVID, and everyone was in the office, you could kind of walk around and look at see what people are doing on their screens. Nowadays, people work from anywhere. You don't know who's accessing your data, and you think of this as kind of like a CCTV system for who's going in and out of your data archives. And so the next thing we have as part of the CSAS is kind of endpoint detection and response. Almost every organization has this already. It's your bread and butter. It is it used to be referred to as antivirus. But there are a few things you need to look out for to make sure that your antivirus is effective. First of all, you want it to be centralized. You want there to be one dashboard you can go in and see the status of all your devices, and making sure that they're all updating and they've all got the latest version of the virus detection certificates. You want to make sure that there's real-time monitoring. So when someone downloads a file, it gets scanned straight away. And you want it to be able to actually do something about it. If it finds a virus, it's great to email and alert someone, but you want it to be able to lock it down as well. You want that virus file not to be able to interact with anything, and potentially, if it's serious enough, you want that computer isolated off the network. You want to make sure it's compatible with your SIEM technologies. It's putting in alerts and linking them together. Jake will talk a little bit more about what a SIEM is later. But yeah, so your EDR is incredibly important, and it is kind of almost like your last line of defense. Or something when a virus gets onto the computer, it can lock it down. So another thing that's incredibly important, but maybe a little bit more complex than people think about, is managed email security. So at Intersys, we believe that you should always look to have a third party managed email security service. What that means is when mail gets sent to your organization, instead of coming straight to your inbox or your 365 tenant, your Google tenant, it goes to this third party, and then it's scanned, and only then is it released. So what you want this third party tool to be doing is you want it to be doing kind of antivirus scanning. You want it to be looking at URLs that you're getting sent. So making sure it's not going to send you to a dodgy place where it could potentially harvest your details. You want to make sure that not only your inbound emails are getting scanned, but also any emails you're getting sent out. Because what can happen is if if an account gets compromised, somebody's accidentally given access, that can be used to spam out all the contacts with potential threat, potential malicious emails, which can do kind of quite significant reputational damage to your organization and potentially your suppliers as well. Jake talked before about supply chain attacks, and this is one way that it happens. Impersonation is always important. I've talked about digital distance here, and so what that is the distance between two domains. So it's all about impersonation. Uh, Impersonation can happen in two ways. So one is somebody registers an email address that looks just like yours. My email is mark.kirby@intersys.co.uk. It wouldn't be hard for someone to register a domain that is intersys.co or intersys.uk. Now, fortunately, no one can do that because we've already bought those domains. But if we hadn't, they could register that domain and create mark.kirby@intersys.co or intersys.uk. And that would be very difficult for me to spot in an email chain if that just those couple of letters changed. So the email solutions that we use will all measure the digital distance between domains and increase the spam score on those ones that are likely impersonation. The other way that you can impersonate is a way called spoofing. And this is when you send emails from outside the organization pretending to be someone else. So, for example, I could create an email that looked like it came from bill.gates@microsoft.com. And if that got through to your inbox, that would look legitimate. The way that you stop that is with a system called DMARC. And we have a very good tool which automates the DMARC process. Um, what that does is it tells the internet that email from intersys.co.uk, for example, can only come from these particular locations, from our 365 tenant or maybe even our HubSpot as well. If it's not from those two places, it gets automatically quarantined. In fact, when we first set up DMARC on our domain, we noticed that almost half the email being sent out across the internet, claiming to be from intersys.co.uk, was coming from Russia. And so straight away, that stopped that kind of scam service that was happening. I'm going to hand back to Jake now. He's going to tell us a little bit more about Aseem.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks, Mark. So Aseem, a security information and event management platform, effectively ingests log data from all of the tools, all of the bits of software that you have set up across your business. So whether that be, if you primarily use Microsoft 365, but also have, a Google Workspace tenant, it's getting the logs from both Microsoft 365 and Google Apps, or I said Google Apps, but Google Workspace, that's old terminology, and all of your other systems that you use, and reporting on anything that may seem untoward. So, we're talking successful logins from known threat actors. So we'll keep our IOCs up to date all the time. So we're monitoring we're monitoring our threat intelligence platforms for for new threat actor groups. We're taking IOCs from those and we're populating our SIEM systems to recognize those threat actor groups. A SIEM will pick up on things like an unknown device accessing a Google account, for instance. Might be it could be if you typically use Windows 10, Windows 11 devices across the board. It could be an alert that says John Smith has logged in from from a Red Hat 6 operating system or something. That's unusual, especially if the organization knows that they don't have any Linux devices provisioned. So a SIEM, collects all of that log data, all of that unstructured log data from all of the systems that you use, and it looks through that, runs a few queries against it, and surfaces anything that may be of concern. And what we do is we have our dashboard in our office for our security team to look at. It's a single pane of glass that tells us what's going on across our client base, and we respond to anything that looks odd. We'll typically investigate that and contain if there is any sort of ongoing breach. But our relationship doesn't just stop there. We will also help organizations document any forensics, anything that we've if it was a successful account compromise, for instance, would help the organization pull together a complete report that they can then send on to key stakeholders in the business. We serve as your security function within your business, but we work alongside your existing teams. Next slide, please, Mark. Also, we've got multiple SOC CSAS packages available on offer, and one of our entry-level packages includes a tool that allows us SIEM-like visibility across all of the cloud platforms. So we're talking software as a service platforms, platform as a service, and we're able to identify instances of impossible travel. So there's an example here. Aaron Richards accessed their Salesforce account from United Kingdom via an IP address, which relates to the Tiscali network, and then from the United States, an AT&T network via a different IP address 5 minutes later. Well, Aaron isn't Spider-Man. He hasn't, he hasn't been able to get from the UK to the United States in 5 minutes. So, we want to be aware of that. New cloud app detected. We have what's called cloud app detection visibility. So we take the telemetry from devices, whether they be remote or in the office, and we report on instances whereby there might have been a new app that people have started using. So let's say that there's 500 people in the organization, right? And a 5% threshold is reached of the number of users accessing Dropbox. A Dropbox is not something that was ever used before in the organization, but people start accessing it on their machine. Now, does that suggest that there might be an ongoing project that has required the team to set up a Dropbox account? Well, we need to be aware of that. So our cloud app detection will pull that up, and it will allow us to raise it with the key contacts in the business. Say, look, we've seen this many devices access this new system in the last 7 days. Just want to make sure you're aware of it. You may already be aware of it, but it's good that we know. Canary token triggers. So what is a canary token? So a canary token is basically like a decoy. It could be a fake document. It could be a fake URL. But the point is, whenever that document is opened or that fake URL is opened, it alerts our security team, because we would put that fake document or that fake link inside a gated system. So if someone untoward is accessing that link or that document and we're getting an alert about it, that may suggest that there's an ongoing compromise. So we're doing more than just identifying instances of impossible travel, we're also taking proactive steps to implement other layers of protection. We'll also this also looks at suspicious inbox rules. Like we've got an example here. An inbox rule activity is detected on matthew.gaiman at intersys.co.uk. The rule moves all new email into the RSS feeds folder. Well, that's dodgy. Matt wouldn't have done that. So we're aware of that, and we can raise that to those in the business that need to know. But yeah, the point is this platform that offers the SIEM-like visibility reports to our security board will empower us to see what's going on across more than just the primary system that you use, across DocuSign, across Salesforce, any system that can integrate with this platform that we use. There's about 40 to 50 different applications that we can integrate, very commonly used. Those that are a bit more niche, slightly more of a struggle. Yeah, but if you're interested in this type of solution, let us know. We'll find out in in a kind of a reconnaissance type exercise any systems that you do use, and we'll work out which ones are compatible. Next slide, please. Mark, brilliant. So something else which I'm incredibly proud of, because it's something that we've worked very hard on over the last year, is we've got a new system that allows us to link in with a customer's Microsoft 365 environment and benchmark their policies against our golden standard tenant. Now, our gold standard tenant, which is a Microsoft 365 environment that's configured with all of the ideal policies that we would like to see rolled out to every business, it is something that we've been working on for ages. Now, this software will look at your environment, the policies that you have, and it will highlight any deviations from our ideal baseline standard. Our ideal baseline standard is inspired by NIST, CIS controls, and NCSC guidance. It's not conclusive, it doesn't conclusively cover any one of those frameworks, but it is proportionate to a lot of the businesses that we deal with. They're not overboard. We roll out the ones that we think isn't going to cause too much disruption in your business. We do this day in, day out, and it's our bread and butter. So we're well positioned to know which ones we can roll out and when we can roll them out to your business. We'll take that headache away from you. And one of the advantages of this system is that it's our baseline, right? It's our golden standard. We're proud of that. We want to keep that up to date. We don't want that to ever become stale. So we're always looking, always listening to podcasts, always looking at what's on the news, trying to figure out ways to better protect environments. If there's controls that can that can mitigate common threats that exist, we'll include those in our baseline, and we'll let you know that we can roll them out to you. So yeah, that ensures that your environment is always up to date and it's given the attention that it deserves. Next slide, please, Mark. Endpoint compliance and vulnerability scanning. So there are, if you've undergone the Cyber Essentials certification, you'll know that one clear rule that's outlined in the Cyber Essentials framework is that all applications should be kept, it should be kept up to date. If there's any update to an application, a security update, it should be rolled out within a 14-day window. Now, there are controls, tools that you can use to update third-party softwares automatically, some of which we actually supply, so you can find out more about that. But what a endpoint compliance and vulnerability scanning tool does is it allows us to validate the effectiveness of the tools that are patching those third-party applications. It allows us to identify gaps in the configuration that we're rolling out to our customers. So if we see an environment that exhibits thousands of critical severity vulnerabilities, Well, that might suggest that some policy behind the scenes isn't doing its job. It's not dictating to machines to automatically update the bit of software. So we're seeing loads of vulnerabilities as a result. So this is great for validation, but not only does it validate endpoints, we install a device in your office if you have an office, or if I know a lot of businesses nowadays they tend to to have a space in the likes of WeWork or somewhere else. But if you have an office that has switches and IoT devices, presentation screens, we can roll out a device that will effectively scan those internally on a daily basis and identify any vulnerabilities that exist. So we're searching for vulnerabilities that exist in the internal network. And yeah, next slide, please, Mark. So we've spoken a bit about internal vulnerability scanning. Let's talk about external vulnerability scanning. So this addresses the scanning of endpoints that you have exposed to the internet, whether that be a website, if you offer a portal to your clients so that they can download documents, like a data room, it could be anything that you have open, hosted from either your office or your AWS environment, Azure, wherever. If it has an IP address, if it's exposed to the internet, we can monitor it with our external vulnerability scanning platform. What the external vulnerability scanning platform will do is it will run scans against the exposed publicly available resource that you've got exposed against the internet, and it will check for any it will uncover any sensitive ports, like management ports, remote desktop ports, any Lumin vulnerabilities, and it basically gives us the same sort of view as what the attacker would have. And it allows us to know about that before the attacker is equipped with that knowledge and exploits it. So, I've worked with organizations in the past where IT teams have configured virtual machines in Azure and have accidentally left some sensitive ports open to the internet. This sort of tool will allow us to surface those instances and obviously get those patched up as soon as possible. It's also ideal for ongoing assessment of those resources, because you could configure a system to be as secure as it can be, but then someone may come in and undo some of that, relax some of the security, and they might do so without raising change control requests or making anyone else in the organization aware. So this will uncover those sorts of instances as well. Yeah, next, I was about to say over to Mark, but this slide's mine as well. Application zero trust. So there's several components that form part of this zero trust strategy. Application allow listing. So this is the idea that no program or any software can execute on your employees' computers unless it's known by the organization and authorized to run. And this extends to browser extensions as well. And why this is important, especially in this day and age, is because I was doing a Bing search the other day, and I don't use Bing. Would you believe it? I was doing a Bing search, and I searched for a bit of software, and there was a lookalike domain that cropped up. I was searching for a tool called Putty, which is a common SSH a tool, and a site came up called putty-v2.com, and it looked like the real Putty site. And when you'd hit the download button, in a lot of cases, it present the actual real Putty installation file. But in some instances, depending on where one is accessing the site from, it would deliver a weaponized version of that Putty installation. Now, this can impact any old user, but also IT staff. So, application whitelisting, allow listing will prevent any unknown application from executing on a machine, and it just means that you're only what you've authorized and said is compliant to run in your organization can actually run. You can imagine what difference that can make. Application ring fencing. So what this is you can dictate what programs can access your sensitive data. So for instance, a PDF file, right, will open in Adobe Reader. What if that PDF file is weaponized? What if it wants to interact with it wants to interact with PowerShell or CMD. It wants to run code on your machine. But why should it? Because a PDF file, or Adobe Reader, has one job, right? And that's to present PDF files. It shouldn't be doing any more than that. So what ring fencing does is it stops Adobe from spawning anything else on the machine that may be in a weaponized PDF file. Just keeps everything nice and containerized. Auditing. This is understanding, log in every action, read, write, execute action that happens on the computer. You can understand that's going to be really good for forensics. If something was to fall through the net, being able to to have the luxury of looking through thousands of lines of logs to see exactly what ran on the machine, what process spawned which other process. You have that information available to you. That's going to really help when you're writing out that report. Or if you pick our CSAS service, it will help us when we're writing your report. Privileged access management is really good. So we talked about least privilege earlier and how important it is for for someone not to run as a local administrator on their machine. You should never, and I I'm in IT. I don't run as an administrator. You should never log into an account that is equipped with admin. That is equipped with admin rights. Reason being is because of drive-by downloads. That's still very much a thing, and just accidentally making changes. We work late sometimes. We're bogged down with work. There's the modern day working environment. We don't always know what we're clicking on, so we don't want to allow something to run without our knowledge, right? So we don't ever want to run as admin. But sometimes it might be necessary, especially in like finance. You might have a finance team who run Sage, for instance, and there might be a Sage update that requires one to enter admin credentials to install that Sage update. Well, with privileged access management, what will happen is if Sage wants to run as an admin to install an update, it will come up with a box and it will say request elevation from the Intersys security team. You'll then provide justification, or the finance person will provide justification. They'll say, I need to update Sage. That will then get fed through to a team of people on our side, and we'll look at it and say, okay, this is a finance person. They're installing the latest Sage update. Yes, this application is signed by Sage. Yes, this application looks legitimate. I'm going to allow elevation for 3 hours. We can manage that whole process for you without ever needing to give anyone admin in your organization. And now, I'm sure you're all sick and tired of hearing my voice, so I will hand over to Mark now for the next slide.
You never get tired of your voice, Jack. Thanks. One of the tools that we use is a dark web monitor, and I think that is incredibly important. So for those of you that don't know, what we call the dark web is essentially unindexed websites. So things that you can't search on Google, you can't even go to a domain for. They're just IP addresses. And on those sites, illicit things can happen. And one of the things that that people do is they buy and sell lists of user credentials. They get these user credentials by hacks of big organizations. Some examples are like LinkedIn, Adobe, both suffered breaches where masses of username and password sets were extracted and then put to sale on the dark web. Our tool has people that sit on this dark web and will buy these lists. And if one of the domains that we're monitoring appears on any of those lists with a password, we get alerted about it and we can change it. I mean, this is just another reason why it's so important for you to have a different username, well, have a different password for every account that you go to. Because once someone gets access to this username and password combination, they're not just going to try it on LinkedIn. They're going to try it on Amazon. They're going to try it on your online banking. They're going to try it everywhere. So we recommend using a password manager, randomizing all your passwords. For me, I only know the password for my password manager. All the rest of them are, change of gibberish. Which means that if any of my information got leaked, it's very unlikely that they'll be able to get into anything. The next thing is incredibly important. It's end user training, because we can put in all the controls in the world in place. But if a user, gives over their username, password, and MFA code, that's it. People have got access to everything. The way that we do this is with kind of short videos. It's just 5 to 10 minutes there, but actually they're more like 2 to 3 minutes because people have short attention spans. But what's really important is we customize the training. Jake talked about emerging threats like AI phishing, man-in-the-middle attacks. When something like that happens, we'll create our own video to share with the people we protect, and then to make sure that they've been paying attention. There's a few questions you've got to answer at the end of that video. So end user training just incredibly important, because it can often be the weakest link. Now, to test that training, we'll do regular email attack simulations. So that is, we have a chap in our organization. His name's Frank, and every month he devises new phishing emails to put together and send to our clients. Essentially, these are set up so they're going to bypass the mail filters, because we know where they're coming from. They're coming from us. But they're going to look like a legitimate email. So you see the example on the bottom right. It looks like it's a legitimate Outlook email. You click in, but it'll take you to a different address where you put in your name, password, and it's a great way of training people to be on the lookout for these things, because it can be to the point where if you've never received a phishing email, you kind of trust that your mail filter is getting everything. So you need to always be on your guard. The other nice thing about this is it will track to see who's clicked on the links, who's entered in their details, and if you do enter in your username and password, it tells you you've been phished, and gives you a little video about how to spot it. One thing that's quite important is you don't want to have a blame culture in the organization. What will happen then is if somebody has put in their username and password and clicked on a link they shouldn't have, they might be scared to come forward about it. And they might just want to hide it, which is the worst thing that could happen. As soon as somebody puts in these credentials, you want to know about it so you can make the necessary changes. Another thing that we do that I think is really important is we work with the organization, with key stakeholders in it, to have regular security meetings. Because as a third party, it is often quite hard to affect change, particularly cultural change within an organization. And so you want to have people within the organization engaged in areas where it's important. Potentially having people like the COO or the office manager. These sort of people you want to be involved in IT talks, IT security talks, because it is something that will affect them as well. And these things, we discuss the current security landscape, what emerging threats are coming up, looking for trends and alerts. Maybe there's been a lot of suspicious activity alerts. Maybe looking at them in a holistic way might identify a broader attack pattern. Looking at any weak points in the organization and identifying staff training opportunities. And particularly if an audit has been done, It's really good to use that as a basis to kind of work through and making sure those things in an audit are getting completed. Those gaps that have been highlighted are getting closed, because too many organizations that we see will actually have an audit done where they find out a lot of things that are potentially potentially security holes, and then they'll just sit on it because they don't have the resource to be able to fix those things. And finally, if everything goes wrong, well, if anything goes wrong, we have a breach response service. And I think this is important for any organization to see is, as I said before, you have to work on the assumption that at some point in your organization's lifetime there will be a breach. And we've talked before about the tools that are used to be able to detect when that breach happens. Um, but you want to be able to make sure you've got a team on hand ready to, dive into the log, see exactly what's happened, see what accounts have been compromised, and contain that threat. Lock it down to make sure it can't do any damage, and then put together a timeline so you understand, what data was accessed, how it was accessed, um, and making sure that you can lock that means down so it doesn't happen again. Um, One of the things that you need to do is you need to report significant data breach to the ICO. Off the top of my head, I think it's within 48 hours. And so being able to have the tools to understand, what the extent of a breach was, what information was compromised, is incredibly important within that. Because if you do not report a breach, you do have the potential to be fined. And so thank you, everyone. We're just 3 minutes under the hour, but appreciate your time for attending. If you have any questions now, do put it in the Q&A, and we will respond as best as we can. And if you'd like to fill in the form, which will be sent out to you by the lovely Faye, our feedback form, you get the opportunity to receive a complimentary dark web scan. And a complimentary email security scan, which we can send you the results for. So I thank you all for your time. Any questions, feel free to put your hands up, or you can even email us later.
Yeah, thank you all. Thanks for attending today.
Thank you. I appreciate the feedback.
Yeah, thanks.
Excellent.
Thanks all.
Enjoy your
Cheers.
day.
Take
Stay
care.
cool.
Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the sun.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.